Hey, what's going on everybody, and welcome back once again. My name is Jordan, also known as J-Monster. I want to thank you for joining me for another replay battle. Today we're going to be playing patch 0.97, and I got a few things to say about the patch before we really get into it, so I'm going to put timestamps for you down in the description for when the army comps will begin, and of course when battle is going to begin if you want to skip all the blah blah blah. But yeah, a few things about this, the map that we're going to be playing on is that it is part of a new event that will be coming out, will be available to everybody, I suppose, upon the release of patch 0.97. It's going to be a tug-of-war good versus evil themed event, and all battles are going to take place in what we have started to call theaters of war. So this particular map belongs to the MIRKWOOD versus Dol Guldur theater, and they are going to be themed for the various levels of escalation in the conflicts that take place. So if you are playing with a certain amount of people, let's say you have a 3v3 group, you're going to be playing on a map, and if you win, then you move on to the next map that's more on the Dol Guldur side of things. If you lose, then they advance towards your third and final map, which is where they can win the most points. That's basically how it works. I won't go into too much detail here, but yeah, there'll be announcements and things like that later that will clarify things a little bit. But yeah, it's going to be open to everybody, so it's not going to be like our Winter Invitational. It's, yeah, going to be something that everybody can play and everyone can participate in. So if you guys are interested in preemptively joining the Discord, you'll find a link down in the description along with everything else you could possibly ever want to know about the mods and the community creators who make content for it. But yeah, what else? Oh yeah, the next build of the patch is going to focus very, very heavily on the campaign. We finally got to the point where, after quite a while of working hard overtime hours essentially together, we have the campaign to a point where it's actually going to be testable, and I'm going to be able to show you some of the mechanics and talk about some of the principles that we have for the campaign moving forward. I'm going to be doing a let's play. All the developers will be eventually. Everyone wants to play with their own faction and just do, you know, maybe not a full campaign, but certainly a number of turns where they can talk about their faction and the campaign and things like that. So that's something to be excited for. I will be posting mine both here and on the official Age Reforged YouTube channel. So if you want to check that out and see some more content by myself, then yeah, you have but to wait a few more days. I think the next build is going to be coming out on Sunday. So yeah, that's pretty exciting. But now, all of that being said and done, let's take a look at some of the army comps, because that's why you guys are here, isn't it? You want to see a battle. You don't want to just listen to me talk like this is my live journal or something. So let's take a look at some of the army comps now, and then we can get into the replay itself. Hope you guys enjoy. The first army we're going to look at today is the Dwarves of Erebor, being commanded by yours truly. I have brought some Ironfoot Hammer Guard, very strong melee cavalry unit. They're also a 2 HP melee knight, so they've got higher than average anti-cavalry bonus. They're not armor-piercing, as their two-handed maces would suggest, just because, yeah, it ends up being a nightmare. They're basically lancers at that point. There's no difference between them and the non-melee cavalry. But still, very strong against cav. Over here I got some mercenary cavalry, fully upgraded. I think I even gave them a chevron. Maybe I even went so far as that, just to compensate for their lower morale, being a mercenary unit. I also brought 3 units of Ironfoot Spears. There's one here, one on either wing to defend myself from cavalry if I need to. A couple units of Ironfoot Axe Throwers, 2 units of the Ironfoot Crossbowmen, 2 units of the Erebor Legionaries, who are an Inspire unit and very much the glue that keeps the whole Dwarven army together, at least for my comp. 2 units of them, also locked morale, so it's impossible to get rid of them without killing them all. Front line consists of Ironfoot Warriors and Ironfoot Pikes. The Ironfoot Warriors are fully upgraded as well, with both attack and defense upgrades. I think that's pretty well it for my army, so let's go ahead and move on to my ally. I'm joined today by Mech FFA Muffins. He's playing as Harad. I think he's got a couple companies of the Haradrim Raiders. He's also got 1 unit of Serpent Guard here. A unit of Muhad War Beast in the back. An interesting unit. Some people love them, some people hate them, some people don't find them worth it, other people find them to be an extremely profitable unit if you can use them well and keep them out of danger. One thing to note about them is that if they take too much damage too quickly, or from fire arrows and things like that, except for an extended period, they will run amok, much like Mumakil. But while you have them active, they hit damned hard on the charge, and they're also technically done as like a spear cavalry unit, so they're not quite as formidable as melee cav in close quarters, but they will serve if you need them for a pinch. Whoop, second company of Serpent Guard over here. Also got some dismounted Serpent Guard. More of an elite unit now in 0.97, so they're very much worth it. Ooh, a little bit of lag. Black Serpents, very heavy on the cavalry, this army. At least 2 units of Trollmen of Harad, Demons of the Desert, some MIRKWOOD Beast Hunters, got some Southron Pikemen as well, and I believe the front line consists mostly of Serpent Guard and Southron Archers. So not a lot of spears here, not a lot of pole arms for Harad, which is something that you tend to see them focus on a little bit more because their mid-tier spears are armor piercing, and their lower tier spears are quite cheap, and you can bring them in very abundant numbers. But more of a cavalry focused build with a heavy elite infantry corps. So interesting to see Harad being played a little bit differently, at least different from how I'm accustomed to seeing them. Moving on now, we have the forces of Isengard being commanded by Mech Starling. He's got some Uruk-hai pikemen. He's also brought Uruk-hai berserkers that he's mixed in there with his front line. A bunch of pikemen, some... What is that, Isengard ballista? Yes, indeed. Very potent siege weapon, probably one of the best in the game in my opinion. At least 1, maybe 2 companies of the Uruk-hai archers. He's also got some Uruk-hai crossbows, some hidden Snaga skirmishers, yet more pikemen, champions of the White Hand, a couple units of war riders, and maybe some warg skirmishers. 2 companies of warg skirmishers, very, very cavalry heavy, and that's probably because he's going to be facing off against Dol Amroth. But speaking of the red team, let's go ahead and see what they have brought to the battle today. The first red team army we're going to look at is the forces of Dol Amroth, commanded by Kuroguro-chan, one of the lead developers of the mod. He's got some Tarnostian shield bearers, and he's mixed them in with a front line of Doran Ernal pikemen. Yeah, Kura has a healthy respect for spear units and for pike units, so this doesn't really surprise me too much. It's fairly cost effective, in the sense that these units don't cost an extreme amount of money, and they can punch, certainly the pikemen over time can punch well above their pay grade if people are foolhardy enough to throw melee infantry at the front of a pike wall. And the Tarnostian shield bearers just help keep them alive for an extended period by blocking incoming missile damage and things like that. Over here, Marines of Belfalost, at least 2 companies, I would say, judging by the length of that line. Got some Guards of the Havens, who are an extremely useful unit for keeping unit cohesion and preventing your units from routing because of the large amounts of morale that they give to nearby units. Also got a couple companies of the Doran Ernal Archers. I think maybe he was expecting someone to be fighting him on his end. Maybe not. But being the pride of Dol Amroth, of course, that Kuroguro-chan has opted to leverage as much cavalry as possible against this opponent. So we have some Tier 3 Lancers here. 1, 2, maybe even so much as 3 companies. Certainly there are 2 of them there. Got some Parathil Randirim, who are the new Horse Archer unit for Dol Amroth in 0.97. Looking a little bit dirty there. I've said this a million times before, but I'll say it again, just in case people have missed it or new people are joining us for the first time. The weather effects are something that we are working on. I would personally, this is my personal preference, it does not mean that that is gospel and things could change. I personally would like to see them applied only to combat, much like the blood effects are, and keep them in the mod. Other people would like to just get rid of them entirely. I understand, you know, that side of things as well. It does add these dirt effects to models that are otherwise like gorgeous and things that people worked really hard on. But I like the immersion, so we'll see. We'll see what ends up happening. But in one way or another, they will end up changing in 0.97, so don't fret too much. Over here we have the Erethirim of Dol Amroth, one of the new knight units that are coming in patch 0.97 alongside the Alcarandas Faithful for both Umbar and Numenor. And these guys are a Lancer Knight, which is something that Dol Amroth has lacked in the past. They're a little bit smaller and a little bit less expensive, so you can bring them both together, which is what Kuroguro-chan has opted to do. He's got some Haven Knights here, melee cavalry, explained them all already just a little bit. 2 HP, heavily armored, really strong against other cavalry units, but they lack the armor-piercing charge of their Erethirim counterparts. Over here we got some Knights of the Silver Swan, just 1 company of them, and I think that's going to round off his cavalry line, but there's a ton of cav there. The infantry is mostly... There's not a lot of killing power here, it's mostly a distraction, and the Guards of the Havens are there to try and keep the whole thing knit together as well as it can. Let's move on now to one of his allies. We have the forces of Imladris being commanded by Mech Streezy 4K. This is actually his favorite faction, so unsurprising to see him here playing as Eladris. He's brought some Doomsmen of Varda, which are a unit that we've had some interesting experiences with. Personally, I think that they might lose one shield value off their 9 shield value, just because I ran into a situation today where they were fighting in melee with Fountain Guard and a whole bunch of other units and simply refusing to die. Maybe it's a once-off thing. We'll see. We'll see what ends up happening. But I am experimenting with some ways to tone this particular unit down. But they will remain, however, much like they are in this battle, very, very strong cavalry units. They are knights, so they're strong against other cavalry units, but unlike melee knights, they don't have the same amount of damage versus cavalry. Over here, we have some Elder Rinway Standard Bearers. Some people love this name, some people don't. I'm partial to it. I kind of like it. Being a standard bearer is a point of pride within an army, so it makes sense that they would be given to these elite units. Nonetheless, they are, I say merely lancers, but they are quite strong. They have high melee defense, high stats all around, not an easy thing to knock down, but they are, of course, quite expensive. So over here we have some Elder Enemy Hedu Hatal, just 2 units of them. Also have some Imladris Guardians with their armor upgrades, 1, 2, 3 units of them. In the back, Elder Rinway Archers. Got some Broinen River Wards, at least 1 unit of the Elder Rinway Haruma Kill. And on the other side, more Haruma Kill and Broinen River Wards. So altogether a very infantry-focused army, which is one of the things that Imladris does specialize in, with a little bit less focus on their cavalry, which is a nice thing to see. I think that just about does it for his army. I don't think he's got anything in there. So let's move on now to one of the new factions in .97. We have the forces of Numenor being commanded by Solomon. He's brought some Romena Marines. 1, 2, 3 Romena Marines. 1 unit at least of Eldolone Swordmasters. Here we have the Royal Legion of Armenelos. I'll get in nice and close so you guys can get a good look at them. Probably my favorite unit in the Numenor roster in terms of how they look. They are also suitably very, very strong. And behind them, we have another one of the new knight units that I mentioned earlier. These are melee knights, the Alcarondas Faithful. They are available to both Umbar and Numenor. Both factions being a little bit more infantry-focused than some of the other Kingdoms of Men. Can really only bring small but elite units of cav, like the Alcarondas Faithful. Over here we have the Eldolande Nobles, which is a new unit type. Certainly not a new... I want to say new bodyguard type. Not a new unit type, really. They are melee cavalry, but they are a melee cavalry bodyguard, whereas previously we only had Lancer bodyguard units with 2 HP. Now we have a melee cavalry unit with 2 HP. They are not quite so formidable as melee knights. However, they have about half the bonus versus cavalry and a little bit lower stats all around, so they're not a replacement for melee knights, and they certainly will not outshine the Alcarondas Faithful. When playing as Numenor, just I want to say a cautionary tale, because it sounds like, I don't know, it just sounds like Numenor is weak or something, when they're certainly not. But you're going to want to use your cavalry as support units if you can. Try and back them up with some of the spear units that you're going to see. It is, I would say, imperative to being successful as Numenor is not getting your cav destroyed, but also not knowing when to be aggressive with them and when to fall back for support. So something to keep in mind when playing as these guys once you get your hands on .97. Over here we have some Romena Marksmen. They are the only mainline archer unit for Numenor, in fact. Quite expensive, as most Numenor units tend to be, but they're also pretty decent infantry after the fact, so something to keep in mind. Over here, Seafarers of Nindamos, which is a new-ish unit. They are largely support, being capped at 2, and quite low on ammunition. They've got about 2 quote-unquote javelins. They're actually done as, their stats were done as throwing axes with their base. So they've got higher base damage, but they aren't armor-piercing. And they have a little bit less ammunition on average than your regular throwing axe units, but you know that's kind of okay. They have the Romena Marines to try and make up for that in terms of mid-range power a little bit. But the most important thing about the Seafarers and Nindamos is that they are a spear unit, so you can defend your flanks, but they are also quite cheap, only costing about 700, whereas the other Numenor units tend to run you about 800 to 850 and beyond. So useful in support. We've got some lag. I think we've got maybe two, possibly even 3 companies of them. Another couple companies with the Romena Marksmen out here on the front line, and a 4th company of Romena Marksmen in addition too. So very very small but elite Numenor force, as you would come to expect from this this powerhouse of the Kingdoms of Men. But that does it for the army comps. Let's go ahead and jump into the replay. Hope you guys enjoy it. So this is going to be a hell of a battle. Being not necessarily outnumbered, but certainly outgunned in terms of ranged firepower, I don't have a ton of choices. I can either sit back and try and make Numenor come to me, or I can move up and attack them while they are relatively isolated from their ally Imladris. Now there are of course some risks associated with that. If I overextend, then I could end up getting gangbanged by both Imladris and Numenor. Not a fun thing to have happen, so I'm going to have to try and stay a little bit closer to my ally Harad. Muffins is going to move up here. He's got his Serpent Guard leading the way. A lot of cavalry, which is what his force is going to rely on. And against Imladris, he's going to have to leverage them as well as he can. He certainly has the numbers to overwhelm these small amounts of Imladris infantry, but whether, or not infantry, rather cavalry, but whether or not his infantry is going to be able to hold the line against the Elves of Imladris remains to be seen. They have certainly some of the most formidable close quarters infantry that are in the mod currently. So yeah, definitely something to be worried about. That being said, he does have Serpent Guard, a fair amount of Serpent Guard. They will stack up reasonably well, as will the Trollmen backing them up. So it's going to be an interesting fight there. I'm actually looking forward to seeing how Muffins did, because I have not... I was not able to pay attention during this battle. I was far too busy with Numenor. Meanwhile, over here, Kurogoro-chan sending his infantry towards one of these two bridges over here. He's gonna... I think the plan here is to keep the Isengarders distracted while he sends the bulk of his cavalry forces wide here around to the second bridge and tries to circumvent the defensive lines that Starling is currently in the process of putting up. Move back on over to my side, because I'm pretty sure this is where things are going to get started first. Very, very close to the Numenorian lines. They are firing down into me with their Romena marksmen, and my dwarves are pretty well nonplussed. They've got the armor, especially with the upgrades, and they've got the shield value to stand out to that for pretty well ever. The Romena marksmen are really more dangerous in melee than they are at range in this kind of matchup. Meanwhile, over here, the Numenorian cavalry is moving on to his left wing, looking to menace my forces as they move forward and begin to engage his main line. He's also brought some backup in the form of the Romena marksmen. I see this, and I know how weak those units can be to cavalry charges, especially from a heavy-duty unit like the Ironfoot Hammer Guard. So this is going to be the point where I take a little bit of initiative and move forward and try and hit them hard. At the same time, going to move forward and distract one of his other cavalry units, the Eldolande Nobles, with my unit of mercenary cavalry. As I said, I give them a chevron and an attack and an armor upgrade, so they will be, at least in my estimation at this point in the battle, they'll be able to hold the line here against the Eldolande Nobles. Meanwhile, Ironfoot Hammer Guard massacring their way through that line of Romena marksmen, cutting down quite a lot of them. I am going to come under fire, however, from the Romena Marines, which I didn't realize were nearby in support, and at the same time, Solomon is going to move up with his Alcaraz Faithful and hit me hard. And then I dropped from like 31 Hammer Guard down to like 20 in just a matter of moments. So, bit of a nightmare situation for me. Certainly one that I can't blame anyone but myself for getting into. I charge forward very impetuously into those Romena marksmen, and at the same time, over on the other end, the Eldolande Nobles are giving me the business. My mercenary cavalry are having already lost a sixth of the unit to these Eldolande Nobles, who have not taken a single casualty. So I'm going to pop my Ironfoot Hammer Guard out of there and go for a rear charge against the Eldolande Nobles, and hopefully try and even out the fight just a little bit. And now with the addition of the Ironfoot Hammer Guard, the Eldolande Nobles going to be in a little bit of trouble. However, Alcaraz Faithful not too far behind, so that's going to be a bit of a foregone conclusion on my end. Meanwhile, looks like the Southrons are skirmishing a little bit here with some of the Numenorians. Muffin's trying to give me a little bit of aid, which, thank goodness for that, because I'm going up against one of the finest infantry forces on the, or I want to say on the planet, in the world of Middle-earth. Meanwhile, over here, I'm driving back the Numenorians in a hail of bolt fire, trying to get myself up into a position so I don't have to fight uphill. And let's see what's going on the other side. So far, Starlink has opted to take up a defensive position here, and Kuro doesn't really have a lot of choice in the matter. He's going to have to force this crossing in order to keep the Isengard army busy, while Let's see where his cavalry are at this point. Ah, yes, the cavalry is all out here behind the hill, so he's going to distract Starling a little bit with his infantry forces, and then move to surprise him with his cavalry. He's going to have to do something quick, though. Poor Kurogoro-chan's units are just getting absolutely butchered by that Isengard catapult. Although it is worth saying, at least they're shooting the Tarnostian shield bearers instead of something that Kuro really cares about. Meanwhile, over here, a lot of wargs just kind of robbing around, doing their thing. And I think Muffins is going to... oh, no, he's not going to have a chance to choose the moment because Imladris is going to come right for him. Very much a rush army here, only a single company of bowmen, not a ton of cavalry, but some really, really hurting infantry power. Ooh, and the Serpent Guard. This is very daring. This is a daring maneuver, certainly. I think Muffins realized exactly what he was charging into, and now he's going to pull back and try and get out of there with the Doomsman of Vorda and the Eldar we had who had close on their heels. Yeah, that's not going to be a fight he's going to win. Ooh, the poor Serpent Guard going to get caught out here by the Doomsman of Vorda. I got some more Serpent Guard coming down the field, looking to drive them back. Meanwhile, the Eldar we had who had moving forward, looking to engage the front line of Harad. It'll be an interesting fight, especially with their being outflanked like this. Muffin's lines appear to be in disarray for the time being. Does he have any sentries? Well, this is going to be an interesting fight. We'll have to come back to it in just a moment. Meanwhile, elsewhere, the Numenorians are being engaged upon multiple fronts. The small thrust that I sent over here in the form of the Ironfoot Spears really wasn't worth my time. Lost me a unit of spears that could have been useful a little bit earlier on, or a little bit later on. But over here, the rest of my forces doing pretty well at overwhelming small pockets here of Numenorian resistance. Seafarers of Nimdamos getting their butts handed to them in close quarters. Romena Marksmen trying to exact some kind of toll for the inevitable loss of these Romena Marines, but it's just not enough damage. Their bow units are not going to be able to do anything to the dwarves. Meanwhile, over here, got my axe throwers in support against some Eldol and these sword masters who charge down the hill into my Ironfoot Spears, and we're absolutely kicking them around like the tiny stunted men they are until my axe throwers came by, and now firing into the rear of these Eldol and these sword masters, they are going to help and turn the tide. Over here, I have a large number of my Ironfoot units that kind of got caught out of position by the Romena Marines, supporting them as best I can with my Ironfoot Hammer Guards. Eldol and the Nobles, however, are pursuing them relentlessly. I do have some pikes mixed in there, so I'm kind of okay with letting my Hammer Guard, pick this particular hill to die on. Hopefully I'll be able to take some of the Eldol and the Nobles with me, and so far I'm not doing so bad. But there are nearby Alcaron-S Faithful, yes indeed. So I've seen them coming, I've moved in a reserve unit of Ironfoot Spears, and I'm pumping damage into them with my Ironfoot crossbows. That's going to help soften them up just a little bit, and just shortly before impact, moments before, the Alcaron-S Faithful see that my Ironfoot Spears are coming for them, and instead they're going to charge right into the rear of my other Ironfoot Spears, possibly routing them. Although, luckily, the dwarves managed to keep their courage, and the Alcaron-S Faithful are in a pretty tough position. They're now being... Ooh, a little bit of lag there. Being peppered from the rear by my crossbow units. I've got some axe throwers nearby as well. They're going to start pumping damage into them. And things on this wing seem to be going reasonably in my favor, given that my cavalry was involved in a fairly disastrous engagement early on, and I lost them both within the first 5 minutes. Over here, my Ironfoot warriors are pulling through, beating down the Romena marksmen. Bit of a riposte there from the Romena marksmen, trying to shoot down my Ironfoot axe throwers. Not going to be worth it, not with fire arrows, loose formation, and dwarves. Meanwhile, over here, Ironfoot axe throwers and the crossbowmen are pretty well instrumental in turning this fight around. Over on this end, I've had to commit my Erebor legionaries against the Royal Legion of Armenelos, and it's just an absolute nightmare. I'm outnumbered, outgunned, almost certainly in terms of quality, so I'm going to have to try and make up for the strength of my units in close quarters with my missile units. That being said, there is some hope. Erebor legionaries over here finished whatever it was that they were beating down, and now they're going to take a step here towards the Romena marksmen. And I'm going to keep my center clear so that I can focus down the Royal Legion of Armenelos, because they are certainly the biggest problem for me. But let's see how Harad is doing. Not so well. The Haradrim infantry is just melting under the pressure from Imladris. even with the hill advantage here and the armor piercing, Serpent Guard are quite hard pressed. Over here, Trollman of Harad doing well against the Broyden River Wards and the Elderly Hadruma kill, but I would expect it to start to turn around pretty shortly. Over here, got some Mahud Beast Hunters maneuvering themselves into position to shoot at. I'm not too sure what. Rear charge here from the Black Serpents. That's going to be a big deal. That's going to help the Serpent Guard out immensely. Over in the center, things looking a little bit more even where the Trollmen of Harad are concerned. And over here, what do we have? A big Cav punch-up. Serpent Guard and Mahud War Beasts versus the Elder Inway Standard Bearers. Got some Haruma kill, and even some Romena Marksmen in support as well, charging downhill here against the Haradrim Cavalry, who is really not in any way, shape, or form up to the task of fighting these elite Elven infantry units. Haruma kill falling back, still full strength, looking for another opportunity where they can be useful. And over here, not going great. Not going great for Dol Amroth, but again, most of this is just a distraction. You have the Guards of the Havens moving up to try and support the Darnostian Shield Bearers, keep them in the fight for as long as possible. And this is where the cavalry from Dol Amroth springs into action. Look at that, just massive file of cavalry, all beelining towards this bridge over here. So once they get across, it'll be interesting to see what Starling can do to try and counter them. Certainly when it comes to close quarters, even the Wargs won't be able to hold back that much Dol Amroth cavalry. But it'll be interesting to see how that works out. Moving on back now to the front lines, where Harad and Imladris are having a showdown. Not going great for Harad. We see some breaking in the center here. The Demons of the Desert. I guess we missed them tossing their javelins into something. But they're getting caught up in this massive rout. Eldarin Hedu Hatal, 2 companies of them. Ooh. There goes Prince Imrahil. But as I was saying, the Eldarin Hedu Hatal catching up with much of the Haradrim infantry in the center. The Serpent Guard have won on the wings, which is great news for Harad. They're going to try and surround these units as they push through into the center. Mahud Beast Hunters over here. Not too sure what... Oh, that's very nasty indeed. Doomsmen of Varda sinking their claws into the Mahud Beast Hunters. It doesn't seem like Harad has anything over here that they can use to try and stop these Doomsmen. They certainly would have needed at least 2 units, I would think, working in tandem. But Harad is just having problems all over the place. Elderly Haruma Kill have broken through the Haradrim right wing, and it's just a nightmare. It's an absolute slaughterhouse. Most of the Haradrim infantry is probably dead at this point. Meanwhile, over here, slowly but surely, I am getting the better of Numenor. Royal Legion of Armenelos significantly weakened, largely thanks to the efforts of my missile units, but they are not being left peacefully to do their job anymore. I got 8 units of Alcaron as Faithful still kicking around, and yeah, they're mulching apart my poor Ironfoot crossbowmen and my axe throwers. Meanwhile, over here, still got a few Eldolande sword masters that have been fighting for a while. You can see that they've really done work against my dwarven spears. I think I sent another company of spearmen in here to finish them off, and they're being pressured from the rear by my Ironfoot axe throwers. Still up here on this hill, Romena Marksmen trying to do something, but the fire arrows aren't worth it at this point. Even normal arrows wouldn't be. They're not really doing anything to my dwarven troops. Over down here, Romena Marines being beaten back by a combination of Ironfoot warriors and Ironfoot pikes, although it is worth saying they did extremely well. My troops were caught a little bit out of position, which is mostly my bad, a lapse in micro on my part. So the Marines have exacted a pretty devastating toll, but nonetheless, I am at least winning on my right wing and in parts of my center. Got over here. Managed to pull some of my axe throwers out, trying to do a little bit of razzle-dazzle, catching these Alcaron S Faithful in a crossfire between my 2 axe thrower units while my crossbows pin them in place. That being said, the lack of armor piercing on the axe throwers is really not going to do much. Most of those axes are going to bounce right off the thick armor of the Alcaron S Faithful, but still, it will at least give my opponent a little bit of pause, maybe think about pulling out those Alcaron S Faithful so that I can try and go after them with my Ironfoot crossbows. Speaking of crossbows, over here, the Eldolande nobles have hacked their way through most of one of my other units of crossbows. I don't have anything nearby that I can use to defend them. Certainly nothing that would get there quick enough that I can afford to pull out, so really they're just being thrown under the bus at this point. And once my Ironfoot Spears finish the Sword Masters off, maybe I can get them down there, but honestly, the nobles will probably pull away before I'm able to do that. What we got here? My crossbowmen have now been released from the clutches of the Alcarondas faithful, and I can see some of the Numenorian units being pulled off to try and chase them down. The Numenorian player Solomon definitely recognizes what kind of threat the crossbowmen are, so he's going to relentlessly go after them with Alcarondas faithful and with the Royal Legion of Armenelos. What are we doing over here? Alcarondas faithful suffering another volley from my my throwing axes. Still that crossfire is going on. And I think... No, that's just an officer. I'm pretty sure his general is in there somewhere. Ooh, Roman and Marksman really taking it on the chin there, too. Harad has come over with what few forces remain to him to try and pressure the rear of the Numenorian line, which, thank goodness, because I am struggling, at least here in the center. Going after the Alcarondas faithful, who are charging in against me, my Ironfoot axe throwers. Yeah, it's a tough fight. But this is the really game-changing part, where Imladris, now free from having freed themselves from the entanglement with Harad, moving forward with a large number of infantry, which I don't really have anything to stop them right now. I've got my Ironfoot axe throwers, which are inevitably going to get caught up in this. I think I try to pull them out, but it's not going to matter. The elven units are far swifter than my my stunted-legged little Ironfoot axe throwers, so they are eventually going to get caught up there. What do we got over here? Eldolande nobles. I started to move my crossbowmen back towards my spears since I was taking very, very substantial losses and not really able to do much with them. Over here, Romana marksmen fighting with my Ironfoot axe throwers, trying to relieve some of the pressure. Oh, I thought there was another engagement going on over there. I guess that the Romana marksmen here just kind of got caught up. And the Ironfoot axe throwers have now routed them and are destroying them. So I'm going to shuffle as much as I can back towards the front lines, where the battle still rages between the dwarves and Numenor. An infantry slog to end all infantry slogs. Slowly but surely, I am actually getting the better of them here, thanks to my airborne legionaries and to my pike units and to my missiles as well. Meanwhile, over here, my poor Ironfoot axe throwers, caught by the Eldolande nobles, caught by the Imladris forces. They are kind of where I need them to be, and I do have some reserve units that I'm trying to get in there as quickly as possible. Ooh, there goes the Numenor general. That's not great for him. But as I was saying, yeah, moving up with my Ironfoot spears now, trying to get them in there, trying to just bog down the Imladris forces, because everything that I have left probably won't be enough to beat a very strong force of Imladris units like this. What do we got over here? Doomsman of Varda charging down my airborne legionaries, trying to relieve some of the pressure on the Royal Legion of Armenelos. Not going to be quite so devastating, I think, as Dreezy needed it to be. Only 5 of the Doomsmen of Varda still left. And that's how that's going. Let's see. Ooh, what's going on over here? The Wargs and Warriors of Dol Amroth facing off against one another. The Warg Riders and the Skirmishers really coming off the worst here. The worst for wear, I should say. Champions of the White Hand, however, mixed in there, and I don't think Kuro Goro-chan really realizes that, so he's going to commit his Knights of the Silver Swan, thinking that maybe they are just normal wargs. But they are not. Champions of the White Hand are extremely devastating, especially against Lancer units. Haven Knights and some Aerotherum finishing off the Warg Skirmishers. If the Knights of the Silver Swan can hold for just a little bit longer, Kuro Goro-chan will be able to completely encircle the Champions of the White Hand and cut them down. Got some Tirthair Lancer reserves over here, along with some Parathil Randirum, just hammering away at Isengard, and it's a tough fight here. Meanwhile, the rest of the Dol Amroth forces have tried to push across the bridge, but it's just really come to no avail. Dol Amroth has actually lost their general, which really unfortunate. It probably would have been a better idea to keep it in one of the cavalry units, since they're the main killing power and certainly under the least amount of pressure. But hey, it is what it is. Dornan Old Pikemen still trying to hold their ground, however, despite the loss of their prince. Tirthair Lancers maybe coming in support. Oh, I see what they're going after. Going for a rear charge against the Nazakai. Or perhaps not. Perhaps they're hunting for the Ballista. Yeah, if Kuro can destroy it quickly, that would certainly be a great thing for his team. If we can hold on to the Ballista, however, that's going to be a big problem for the Imladris elves, who have now cut down Harad. In the process of cutting down my dwarves, not going to be many of them left. But yeah, the Dolamarth infantry pretty well not a factor any longer. There goes my general, cut down by some of the Broyne and River wards. Actually, I remember pretty distinctly what happened over here. Yeah, some of the Broyne and River wards were pulled out and used in a very well-timed flanking maneuver, and Dreezy managed to catch my general inside a unit of Ironfoot crossbows who were hammering the Imladra's front line. And now my forces are going to get pincered. What few infantry I have remaining, the Ironfoot axe thrower is not out of ammunition yet. Getting beat down by these Imladra's forces. There goes the Isengard general. That could spell disaster for Isengard if his morale begins to flag. Imladra's Guardians, this Imladra's infantry death ball. I'm trying to slow it down. I've got some more airborne legionaries that I'm throwing in here to try and keep the fighting spirits of my Ironfoot axe throwers up. However, with the loss of my general, things are looking pretty bleak. Pulling in what remains of my crossbows out of there. I still have another small unit over here as well, which I'm using to try and focus down this blob. I got another company of my airborne legionaries in there. All I want to do is pin down the Imladra's infantry for as long as possible, and hammer them into submission with my crossbowmen. Over here, I got some pikes and some Ironfoot warriors, which I'm hoping will be able to stand their ground against the Elder and Haruma kill. Although unfortunately, I don't think I put them in the best formation. So what they end up doing is getting themselves surrounded, which when you're fighting Haruma kill, not a good thing. You want to try and keep them at arm's length, which I was trying to do with my pikes, but it's just not working out for me very well. A lot of dead dwarves all over the place, and I think Numenor is pretty well a non-issue at this point as well. So far, however, things are going okay. My Ironfoot axe throwers fought well, down to 15. I would expect them to rout around that point without a general. My airborne legionaries are locked morale, so they're going to hold the line. There goes the Imladra's general. Great news, cut down by the Demons of the Desert. I've still got another 51 or so airborne legionaries over here, more than enough to keep the Imladra's Guardians pinned down. But this is the unfortunate part, is that they're not in the right position in order to be able to do so. I don't have them between the infantry and my my crossbows. I have them really on the wrong side. What do we got here? Seafarers of Nindamos tossing their, what are essentially throwing axes into the rear of my airborne legionaries. They'll be able to weather that storm. I think I've switched my attention over here to where the Haruma kill are, trying to shoot them in the back with some crossbows. And this is where my Ironfoot legionnaires can just take no more. They've lost their general, they've lost a lot of their friends. They're fighting in a disadvantageous position, surrounded by some of the best that the Eldar can throw at them. They are going to start to break, and then the Imladra's Guardians in the center are going to pull through the few units of legionnaires I can put in front of them, and they're going to go right after my crossbows. But it is not over yet. My crossbows are going to flee. They're going to kite a little bit. I knew that certainly my fight was lost, so at the very least I could maybe try and pull the Imladra's player out of position so that he won't be able to immediately move to reinforce his ally Dolamarth against Isengard. And speaking of, Isengard has actually come out reasonably well at this point. They've got a couple strong units of pikemen left. They've got their ballista. I think they've got some Nazakai somewhere as well, whereas Dolamarth is just down to their cavalry. So when it comes down to cav versus pikes, I was a betting man. I would put my money on the pikes pretty well any day. And over here, Aerotherum trying to get a piece of that ballista. A lot of crew left. Certainly one of the more dangerous assets on the field over here. 50 Nazakai. Ton of Parathail Randirum, but Isengard has the tools possibly to win this if they are careful. Over here, well, maybe I spoke too soon. There are some Dolamarth infantrymen left over, but they are tired archer units, which are not really suited for frontline combat. Certainly not against Nazakai and pikemen. Well, what do you know? One other company across the way there that Kuro was using to try and support his units, but this is just a disaster for Dolamarth. But again, it was more of a distraction rather than the main thrust of their army. A lot of maneuvering now, as you'd expect between these pikes and his cavalry units. Dolamarth is actually sending a little bit of help over in my direction, possibly to wipe out any remnants of Harad. Got some Southron pikemen over here. The Haradrim still have their general, one unit of Black Serpents, one unit left in the unit of Black Serpents, I should say, commanding his troops. That's tough. Seafarers of Nindamos all that remains of the once proud Númenórean army. My airborne legionaries fighting to the death here against the Elder Enemy Hadrumakil, doing their best. But most of my forces are now in full retreat, although it is worth saying, significant contingent from Imladris' remaining forces, already quite tired, have chased me a good deal of the way across the map. And the only reason I'm really able to pull this off is because my Iron Foot crossbowmen were just warmed up, whereas most of these units have been involved in heavy fighting for a while, so they're going to lag behind. And my Iron Foot crossbowmen are going to be able to lead them on a merry chase over towards the borders of the map. So in and of itself, I suppose, is a small victory. A few panicked bands of dwarves still roving the battlefield, unsure of where to go. Where might be safe? Nowhere is safe. Royal Legion of Armenelos exacting some revenge for the loss of most of the Númenórean host on my poor, outnumbered, and surrounded Erebor legionaries. Well, that's going to be all she wrote for them. Maybe I spoke too soon. Númenor does actually have a few things left over. Some Rometa marksmen over on this end, certainly. Maybe one other unit? Nope, that would about do it. What does Harad have left? There's the pikemen. Looks like Harad is going to try and meet up with their ally Isengard over on the Isengard Dalamroth front. Ooh, Haven Knights getting embroiled in a fight here with the Uruk-hai pikemen. Again, Crow trying to distract his enemy with some Dornodal archers from the front while he comes in from the rear with his cavalry. Dornodal archers have now been committed across the bridge, and the pikemen are going to have to turn and deal with him, which will potentially open up some opportunities for Kuroguro Chen to maybe charge down the Isengard ballista. It's shaken, so a good charge from the cavalry could be enough to rout it. But then so are the Dornodal archers, and there's no cavalry that seems to be forthcoming. Over here, the Nazakai, really suffering quite grievously at the hands of some of the Arathirum, down from 50 to 37. Still a significant number of Nazakai left, however. Far more than Kurow's remaining cavalry units are equipped to deal with. So it looks like this is going to be a victory for Isengard after all. Though what he manages to come out with at the end of this scrap remains to be seen. Uruk-hai pikemen charged in the rear by the Haven Knights. That's going to hurt. If they turn around and poke those Haven Knights to death, well, that's going to be probably not so great for Kuro. He's really down to his last leg. Got some Parathil Randirum over here. Yeah, who knows what's going to happen. One little fun aside is the Imladris Guardians, for whatever reason, I don't think Dreezy intended to do this, but they stopped chasing me, so they're no longer hot on my heels. There goes the Dalamroth General? Maybe? Or no, that would be the Haradrim General. But anyway, so the Imladris Guardians gave me a little bit of breathing room, which I'm immediately going to exploit with my Iron Foot crossbowmen and fire into them. One more volley at close range. If I can get it off, should be enough to see these guys from the field and send them screaming into the next life. Bam. Executed. So now that that's over and done with, I'm going to move forward with my Iron Foot crossbowmen and try and rejoin my allies. Hopefully I don't get there too late. Meanwhile, the rest of the Imladris host is cycling back towards the front against Isengard. If they were over here and supporting Dalamroth at the same time as Númenor was, well, this might be a bit of a different outcome, at least on this end. Dalamroth is pretty well spent, however. Just didn't have the support, I guess, that they needed because Dreezy was so far away that they've basically melted here. Even with a little bit of help from the Númenorians up there on the hill, raining down their fire arrows, it's not going to be enough, and Dalamroth's remaining forces are going to be swept from the field. But at this point, it's very close. This is a close match. It is 94 to 92. The biggest thing that the blue team has going for them is these companies of pikemen, and Solomon is steadily reducing that advantage by pummeling these pikemen from afar, where they are most vulnerable. A few Southron pikemen moving over this way. Looks like they managed to catch one of the Haven Knights and put an end to that unit once and for all. Vengeance from the grave there. Nothing left over from the Haradrim side of things, but they managed to get that one last poke in at Dalamroth before the battle ends. Now let's see what we have here. 41 exhausted, but still fairly healthy. Elder Enemy Hadrumakil. Got some Númenorian Romena marksmen. fair amount of Imladris Guardians, about 40 in that unit. Bruin and River Wards. Royal Legion of Armenelos still kicking. Down to 16, but at this point in the game, that's pretty significant. And then there's my tiny, tiny unit of crossbows out here, desperately trying to huff their way back to the front lines. I don't know if they're going to get there before anything really happens. This is significant, though. The Isengarders managed to hold on to that artillery piece, and now the Romenna marksmen are going to be forced off of their advantageous hilltop position under heavy fire the entire way, taking some serious losses. Nicely placed ballista here from Starling, firing directly over the heads of his pikemen, but not hitting them. Positioned a little bit of a gap in his line. Good stuff. Good positional play there. Romenna marksmen charging in pretty well solo, however. Well, no, they've stopped. Solomon is waiting for, at least for the rest of his troops to catch up and for Drizzy to arrive on scene as well. Let's go ahead and kick things into full speed. Ooh, nice shot there by the ballista. Going to claim the lives of a couple of the Haruma kill. Drizzy, he needs to wait for the rest of his forces to catch up, but he can't wait for too long. Let's see what we got out here. Bruin and River Wards. At least one unit has been turned around to try and delay my Ironfire Crossbowmen. I think there's another small unit of Imladris Guardians. Yeah, you can hear them dying. Oh yeah, there they are. That have been sent to delay my Ironfire Crossbowmen from arriving on scene, and the Bruin and River Wards are going to be there to do the same thing. However, there are a fairly substantial number of infantrymen left. Imladris Guardians, Eldarinwe Haruma kill. Got some Romenna marksmen here squaring off against Nazakai. Ooh, that's nasty. There might be a small company of Romenna Marines left over trying to support them against the Nazakai. This is a tough fight for the Romenna marksmen. It does say the victory is certain, though, which is surprising. It says that for both sides, though, so I don't know who to believe. Meanwhile, over here, Imladris Guardians trying to catch the Urukai pikemen out of position, and they have successfully done so. Managed to get them surrounded, at least on this this wing of the unit's formation, and they could use that leverage to try and roll up the line. Ooh, but a hit from the catapult there, or from the ballista rather, very risky. Could have routed his own pikemen there as well, but it hit more of the elves than it did of the pikemen, and of course the Nazakai are nearby, giving them a bit of a morale bonus. So that's going to rout the Imladris Guardians from the field. 17 of them still left. That's painful. It's not a loss that they can afford at this point. Let's see what's going on over here. Where are the Eldarinwe Haruma kill? Demons of the Desert still running around, still active, which is surprising. The Eldarinwe Haruma kill. Looks like they were beaten back by the Urukai pikemen, and probably a little bit of help here from the Spearmen, the Demons of the Desert, and of course the good old Isengard ballista. So now we're at 98 to 94. I think the only real substantial force still standing is the Royal Legion of Armenelos. And now they're going to be targeted by that ballista. Starling just indiscriminately firing into his own troops. But at this point, it doesn't really matter too much. 4 Legion of Armenelos, I think, are the only troops still standing with the will to fight. One more shot. Oof. Down to 2. And there you have it. Numenor is going to admit defeat, and that's going to be game over. 95 to 98, a very, very close battle. Intense on multiple fronts that really could have gone either way. If the elves hadn't chased my crossbows, they would have been in a better position in order to support Dol Amroth when they needed it. If they were over there supporting Dol Amroth at the same time that they were putting pressure on Isengard, they probably would have been able to break those pike units, and that would have been the end of the game. But of course, if they ignored my crossbows, then that's also not an ideal situation. So it was a tough choice for Drizzy. But ultimately, this was the result that we had. It was probably a tough call at the time, but yeah, probably shouldn't have chased those crossbows quite so far as he did. Let's take a look at some of the kills here. I know people get almost frighteningly upset when I forget to show these. My crossbowmen, a lot of kills there. Ironfoot warriors did pretty well. My airborne legionaries, also a lot of the killing power in my army came from the airborne legionaries. Ironfoot axe throwers doing all right. Hammer guard 94, more than I expected them to get, mostly the result of a few opportunistic rear charges. My Ironfoot spears mostly were there to hold the line, did all right. And my Ironfoot pikes, it was a little bit disappointing, but also that's Numenorian kills, so it's not there wasn't a ton of units to go around, so it makes sense that some of these units would have a little bit lower kill scores. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this battle. It was very, very close. Probably one of the closer battles I think I've had on 0.97, so I hope it was enjoyable for you, and I hope you'll join me for whatever comes next. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye!